been described as one of the most evocative voices in psychotherapy today. What led you to this bold approach of working with anger instead of I guess working around it, running from it, facing
Mhm.
it head on? What led you to that?
Yeah, I would like to say I got my PhD in my own pain and suffering experience, and that gave me the wisdom
Mm,
that I have today, not graduate school. Um,
Wow.
so I originally went back to school. You know, you heard I have my first master's. I already had a first master's. I didn't want to change my career. I wasn't looking to radically upend my life. But this is about 16 years ago. I myself was in such a profound depression that I was barely functioning. And I was looking for a good enough therapist to help me. And so I went to one therapist, another therapist, just all these therapists. And every time I'm sitting there on the couch and I'm thinking to myself, you know, Bronwyn, you are hardly functional right now, but I still think you would make a better therapist than this person. So
on me.
I kind of resolved I'm going to go back to school and learn how to do this because there's just some intuitive parts that are really missing here. And I did. I went back to school, but the long story is I had this depressive episode. I did get better from that. I recovered, but then I fell into an even more debilitating, pernicious depressive episode that lasted years after that. And when I finally pulled out of that second one and started going back to being a therapist again, because I wasn't able to work for a while, that's how bad it
Mm,
was.
wow.
Um, my brain started connecting all these dots where I started to realize my clients' depression, their anxiety, their mania is a result of their own suppressed anger. And I started realizing that's exactly what caused my depressive episodes too,
Wow.
is that I disassociated, as we all do, from my anger during a couple periods of my life. And when I started, you know, what brought me out of those depressions was me connecting with my anger. But I wasn't conscious of all this at the time.
Mhm.
But once I started connecting to my anger and feeling it, it kind of brought me back to life. And that didn't make me a quote angry person, like out of control, like we think of. It made me someone who just naturally was able to say, you know what? That's wrong what they accused me of. And that's
Mhm.
wrong that they expected that of me. And I was wrong to allow them to continue to expect that of me and not be more assertive and have a boundary. And so I saw my own, you know, what I failed to do as well as other people's failures. And that's really what the anger did. It was give me clarity. Like I was wrong, that person was wrong. If I had just said no, I'm not going to, you know, stay here and work with you if you're, you know, expecting me to do this, I wouldn't have been depressed. But every time I dissociated from my anger because I told myself, you know what, Bronwyn, just do it, just show up, be a
Mm,
nice
mm,
person, whatever. I betrayed myself. And each time we
Mhm.
betray ourselves, we get sicker and sicker and sicker until I
Wow.
myself was, I actually had a suicide attempt with my second depressive episode.
wow.
It was so, so bad. So that was kind of the common denominator because I'd see this in my clients where they would tell me about a panic attack. I'd say, wait, hold on. Did you think that maybe that thing that happened right before the panic attack that really should have made you angry, but you didn't allow yourself to feel angry was actually, you know, the prompt? That was actually the trigger.
Mm,
And so once I started helping my clients to connect to their anger, again, not to explode on people, not to be violent or verbally violent, but to just be empowered to say, you know what? No, I'm going to say no. That's me betraying myself if I don't say no or have a boundary or be assertive or push back on people. You know, that is the key. That's the solution.
Wow. And that's sorry, I'm
no, 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 fine.
jumping right in. That's kind of jumping from the beginning to the end, and it's the middle bit. There is a fear, isn't there, that if I
Mm.
face this anger, if I allow this anger to make itself known,
Mm.
I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I don't know how I'm going to be or how it's going to turn out. How do you help people have the confidence to acknowledge that emotion and
Mm.
work well with it? Because
Yeah.
that's a really big deal, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think the templates that we have that create that fear are rooted in our early childhood, because most of us, if not all of us, when we went through the quote terrible twos, when we start to differentiate from our parent and say no and push
Mm.
away and say mine, me do it, you know, maybe we had a parent who gave us the silent treatment or who shamed us. No, you don't get to do that. That's bad. So we have shame, in our little brains at that age. There gets formed this connection between me being true to myself, me having a boundary, me connecting with my anger and being my own distinct person, and being shamed by someone else or being even abandoned, because the silent treatment to a little child is abandonment, and we cannot
Mm.
tolerate to even consider that when we're so young.
Hmm. So when you, and I've heard it said actually that if you shut down any emotion, you kind of shut down all your emotions and you're
Yeah.
not able to feel or be true to yourself. But it feels sometimes like you're opening up this Pandora's box if you say to people it's okay to feel angry and to allow your anger to be present. What do you do with this thing that can be like a bomb that can go off if you don't manage it well? I use
Well,
the word manage if you don't
yeah, yeah,
honor it
yeah, yeah.
well.
Right, right, right. Well, if it is okay, so first of all, let's do some kind of education around this. So anger is going to be there whether we acknowledge it and recognize it or not. And so when people make us angry, it doesn't just evaporate our anger. It actually it gets stuck inside our bodies, and
Mm.
it haunts us and it
Hmm,
makes us sick. And it also leaks out at the people who least deserve it in our lives. So
true.
if we're having a hard time at work or with a spouse and we're not being responsible with that anger and we're just ignoring it and pretending it's not there, it will leak out onto our children.
Yeah.
Well,
It
that
will
that
leak
exactly
out.
was my question there. Is
Yeah.
it a case that a lot of people are just pretending the anger isn't there,
Yes.
or are they somehow minimizing the anger, or what are people generally doing with the anger? Is it a pretense thing?
They talk themselves out of it.
Okay.
So, so I'm about when we connect with our anger, when we start to heal our relationship with our anger, because we all have anger.
Mm.
We all humans. But when we heal our relationship to our anger, so that means we start reorienting how we see it, and we say, you know what? It's valid. It's there for a reason. It's there to give me wisdom. It's like the light on the dashboard of my car saying, hey, check under the engine to bring about repair. Something needs your attention and it needs repair. So when we can see it as a healthy part of us, when we start to heal our relationship with that part of us, our anger, we're actually healing our relationship with our inner child.
Mm,
We're integrating with our inner child. We're becoming more whole, because when we say the word integral, like an integral number, that's a whole number. So
mm,
we're becoming more whole. So when we talk ourselves out of our anger, which is what most of us do, that is our adult self up here in the prefrontal cortex, where we have logic, talking to that inner child saying, nah, no, I'm not going to attune to you. You don't matter. I'm going to neglect you just like our parents did. I'm going to shame you. I'm going to, sequester you away. And so we're more disintegrated. We're more split and we're more sick as a result.
wow. That
Ignore the
really,
system.
that really flips the script because we're taught, aren't we, to talk ourselves off the cliff, to count to 10, to move back, which I'm sure has its place. But this moment of acknowledging the anger as a warning light, saying something's not right, something's being, boundaries being crossed,
Yeah,
there's a truth about you that needs attention here. That bit of discovering what that is, I think we rush past too quickly and start saying, shh, shh, don't make a noise, don't fuss. Let's move past
absolutely.
this. Yeah.
Yes. And, I'll give you an example. So I think what we're all afraid of, though, is our reactivity, right?
Mm,
So it's not anger per se, it's the reactivity that we could end up giving into as a result. And the most reactive anger that we have are what I call triggers. So our triggers from our early childhood. So, and those are usually when we feel rejected by someone, when we feel excluded, when we feel abandoned, when we feel shamed, and those are things that we did experience in our early childhood. And so for me, I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I got in an argument with my daughter where I felt very well. Okay. So I didn't know what I was feeling at the time. I knew I felt angry. That's all I felt. And so afterwards, we got in this argument. I come upstairs about an hour later. I'm like, I'm just going to reflect on what was that? That was crazy. Like I was not myself just now. And I don't even know what got into me. So I reflected on it. And all of a sudden I realized what happened was I felt rejected by her. That's what is under the anger. So there's always primary emotions under the anger. Anger is a secondary emotion. So I felt rejected because I asked her how her day was and she didn't want to talk about it. And, that is actually, logically, I would say that is actually her prerogative. But, little Bronwyn felt rejected her whole childhood when her mom never talked to her. And so that's my trigger. And I realized that's my trigger. That is not my daughter's. That's mine. It's my responsibility. And so I have, as a therapist, come up with a technique that I call an integration exercise. And I lead my clients in this. And then I do a lot of these on my podcast as well, because I want to get them out to everyone. I want to get everyone doing these things for themselves, where we talk to our inner child, where we imagine our adult self looking in the eyes of our little, 2-year-old, 3-year-old self and saying, you know what, Bronwyn, I know how hurt you feel when your mom never talks to you and she's just silent all the time and she never listens to you. I don't blame you for feeling rejected. I don't blame you for feeling ashamed, because as a child, you're just, of course, concluding that the reason she never talks to you is a you problem. That's what children do. They always, assume it's a them problem. And I don't blame you for feeling that. But you know what, little Bronwyn, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put all that shame you feel as a result in this big cardboard box. And we're going to return it to our mom, because it's actually her shame, not ours. It's always been her shame, because she's the one who decided to have a child and never, interact with it. And that is inherently a shameful thing. And that's not our shame. And so we're going to return to owner and say, here you go, mom, do with it what you will, but it's yours. It's not mine. And little Bronwyn, what I need you to know is there is nothing inherently flawed with you. And I see your preciousness. I see how good you are. And I want to listen to you. And I want to, hear you and talk to you and make eye contact with you. And I'm sorry I haven't done that, actually. I'm sorry that I have bounced on you just like your mom did. I'm sorry that I have not been there to attune to you. But from here on out, I'm going to win back your trust in me. And I'm going to start to listen to you, to validate your feelings, to prioritize your feelings, and to feel them with you, because what's shareable is bearable.
Oh, I like that.
But how do you help people to visualize that, this pardon me, this other person, this other image that we're creating here? How do you help them connect with that person? I guess we're making up a person here to communicate with. How do people just sit there and imagine that? How does
You're
that
asking
work?
that from a very masculine brain perspective, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, it helps to start, where I usually start, what I find leads us right back to those early templates, those early memories, is when we're triggered in the moment, or after that, we can go back. So what I did when I sat there and I said, what just happened? I closed my eyes. I allowed myself to feel what I felt in my body when I felt rejected by my daughter, which I felt a knot in my gut. That's actually a very common sensation that a lot of people have. That's where we hold shame, actually, is in our gut. And so I just closed my eyes. I allowed myself to feel that in my gut. And then I let my mind just float back to the first time I remember feeling that same sensation. And it is amazing. Our body will take us right back to a very early imprinting memory.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I picture, little 3-year-old Bronwyn, and I just imagine her. I engage my imagination and I make eye contact with her. I get down on her level. And that's where we have that conversation.
Wow. And you mentioned that rejection is a primary emotion, anger is a secondary. What other primary emotions are there? The main ones, so that it can help us all recognize what's
Great
really
question.
going on when we feel the anger, to identify what's beneath it.
Yeah, what's under the anger is some type of rejection. So it could be just feeling ignored. That's a big one. If we experience neglect as children, emotional neglect, our parents didn't know the importance of this kind of stuff like we do, like we're learning today.
Yeah.
They thought if we were, fed well and clothed and had a roof over our head, they were doing their job. And yet we did experience emotional neglect. And so um, when we feel that same neglect, like when we feel excluded, by someone today, or we feel like maybe someone's not making enough eye contact with us, or maybe they're saying something a little snarky. And so it's triggering shame. All those things kind of go together.
Mm. As you were talking there, I just was reminded. So my personal example, I think, is respect, or lack of respect, disrespect, and that
Yeah.
was for me a big one with our teenagers when they were teenagers. Maybe it's a cultural thing, but I grew up in an environment where respect for elders, parents is a big deal. And so when our teenagers came back with lip and all sorts of things, I would get angry. And then actually, when I stopped and I thought about it, I realized that their disrespect wasn't real disrespect. It was them uh, coming across in a certain way, actually, because they were manifesting other symptoms. They were afraid of something, or there was
Mm.
something else that was causing them to show disrespect
Mm.
that I was then responding negatively to.
Yeah.
So we sort of entered into a spiral. So maybe I had my own moments of sitting and thinking, hang on, what is going on here? Where are all these emotions coming
Mhm.
from? Because
That is, yeah, you're so right on. I mean, what's that phrase? Like, it's not the whatever, it's what's under that.
Yeah.
There's always in a relationship with a partner or children, this is the tip of the iceberg. And if
yeah,
we can go under that and be like, why are they suddenly acting like
yeah,
this? Like, what happened? When did that start? Oh, this morning. Oh, maybe it's what happened this morning. And we can go the deeper layer. Or, we could just say to our teenager, like, I'm feeling kind of disrespected by you, but I'm wondering if it has to do with X, Y, or Z. Could it be
mm,
that, and we can work with them to see what's under that.
yeah.
Why is there this snarkiness suddenly?
Yeah.
Well, for us, it was quite often. Sometimes there would be uh, feeling of shame, or you say you said something to them, and they I hadn't realized that they were on the phone with a friend, and it now made them look silly or small or what have you. And now
Yeah.
they've responded in a way that's disrespectful, and I'm responding to the disrespect. As I say, I think,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but as you say, digging to find out what it is that's causing the response, this triggering is key.
So I love the way you started to give really practical examples of how to hold that space and what to do with
Mm,
it. So you mentioned that a situation's happened, you find that you've gone from 0 to 100 in terms of the anger that you feel. Don't suppress it, pay attention to it. And
Mhm.
then what are the like
mm,
steps that we need to go through in that moment to to honor it well without
Yeah.
hurting people?
mm,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I would just start with like saying, okay, I can feel angry right now. Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. Our emotions are not good or bad or right or wrong. They're not even voluntary, they're involuntary. So I'm not
Yeah.
going to judge it.
mm,
And I'm just going to feel it. Where do I feel it in my body? Well, I feel it in my chest, or maybe I feel it in my gut. Maybe I feel it in my shoulders, wherever. I'm just going to feel it and start there. And then I'm going to be curious and say, what's this anger all about? What does it need from me right now? Is this me being triggered from my childhood and then I need to, work through this? Or is this other person? Is what they insinuated really as rude as maybe I think it might be, and I don't want it to be. Like, are they really being as obnoxious as they might be right now? And I don't want to acknowledge that. And then I'm going to need to feel that anger and figure it out. What does that anger need from me? Does it need a boundary with this person? Does it need to say, hey, I'm not sure what you meant by that, but it doesn't sound good. Can you clarify? So that's me being assertive. So that's me channeling that anger out of my body in a responsible way. So now it's not stagnating inside of me, making me depressed or anxious or, having a panic attack or what have you.
So one of the things I know I do, I don't know if this is suppressing it, is I need a moment to do all of that, which means I might lose the moment to address the situation, the person's left, gone on, whatever. But having the conversation after is important for me to clear the air and I suppose clear my system. Is that wrong to have that length of pause in between? Do you?
No, I think it is hard to do things in real time. I'm the same way even now, and I've grown a lot in this area, but it's hard to trust ourselves 100% in the moment. It's hard to really see everything clearly in the moment.
Yeah.
So, let's say, I was called to a meeting and this person I was supposed to meet with is like 15 minutes late. And, I say, hey, Andrea, this is like the third time this has happened. What's going on? Right. So maybe I don't say it till the second or third time, but now I'm bringing that assertiveness, that accountability. So yeah, absolutely.
So what about those who blow up? How would you help? People, some people say, I feel angry and I just let it all out. This is who I am. And you're going to hear it with the weight. What?
Yeah, I was going to say on that point, but just picking up on that one there, are there angry people out there? Are some people just angry?
Yeah. So there are those people who get labeled the angry person. I don't like that label because we're all humans, which means we all have anger. But they are the ones who get the most attention because they're just eruptive, they're reactive, right?
Yeah.
And I would say those people are the people who have not dealt with the original source of their anger. And so it is leaking out at all these other things. It's leaking out with the other drivers on the road. It's leaking out at work. It's leaking out with their children. And they're not a safe person because they haven't addressed the root source, which is usually a parent. And they don't want to address that. They haven't, been responsible with their anger. But once they do, if they decide to, they're going to channel that anger out of their body in a very healthy way. Maybe we should talk about that because we all have parents and we all have anger at them, actually, I would say. So we can be responsible for our anger with our parents by, first of all, giving ourselves permission, because our parents were human, we're human, everyone's human, and they all make mistakes. We all do. And maybe our parents never owned those mistakes and apologized. And maybe they're deceased now, but we can still allow ourselves to feel angry and say, you know what? Yeah, they're human. And I need to take them off of the God throne and off of that divine pedestal and see them as just human, just like me. And maybe they never admitted, and owned their mistakes or apologized, but I can be angry at them. And that doesn't mean I don't love them. It doesn't mean I don't have a lot of empathy for their own childhoods and everything they lived through. Those things are not mutually exclusive, but I can still be angry. And so when we are able to acknowledge that anger, to feel it, that is really empowering, and it keeps us from repeating the mistakes of our parents. It kind of opens our eyes, if you will. And then we kind of start going, wait, I think I am doing the same things. And I think I need to own that to my children and apologize to them. And so it helps us, do that U-turn in our lives, right? And have that humility. But as far as like with a parent, what I recommend, and I've done this myself, is we can write a fantasy letter to them. We're never necessarily going to share it with them. Maybe they're deceased, so we're definitely not going to share it with them. But we're just expressing, we're documenting, hey, you know what? You really shamed me as a child. And that was completely unnecessary and unproductive and very, very hurtful, actually.
Mm.
And I'm really angry about that because you had unrealistic expectations of me. And that's not okay. So we can channel these things out of our body into words. It has to be through words. And we can do that through a letter. We can do that, through therapy or talking about with a friend, but through words is how we do that.
I'm intrigued. So I mean, it's great there, and I can see that as a great way to handle past hurts, as you say, childhood hurts, how we've been handled, how we've been brought up, etc. But if we are dealing with, let's take that example of an angry person out there who's just, they're under a lot of stress, whatever it is, for whatever reason, they're coming across as angry all the
Oh,
time.
okay. Mm-hmm.
We can't change them. What can we do to, I mean, if they can go on an anger management course or get some way
Yeah.
to address, to confront, to not to confront, but to work around and to work with their anger, great. But absent that, what can we do for ourselves to be able to turn up better around these people and not let
Yeah.
their anger pour out on us, and we then, repeat the
Yeah.
cycle?
Oh, that's a great question. Great question. So here's what we do. We are a mirror. And I'll give you another example. So a year ago or so, I took my really elderly dog into the vet. I knew she was on her last legs, but I just wanted a professional to say, yes, it's time to put her down, because you feel like you're playing God. And
Yeah.
anyway, so I took her in the vet. The vet was so rude. She walks in, she doesn't make eye contact with me. She doesn't introduce herself. She barely looks at my dog. And she goes, "Why are you here?" And so I said, "Well, did you listen to what the vet tech, I met with the vet tech first, and the vet tech wrote everything down and said she'd share it with you. So did you hear that?" And she's like, "Yeah. Why are you here?" So anyway, I said, "Well," and I start telling her. And then I said at the end, I want to make sure that my dog's last weeks and months, I'm not resenting her. Because, when you have an old dog, she was pooping in the house
Mm.
and, I was getting resentful and I had other animals too. Anyway, so she goes, if you just took care of her and washed her and groomed her, she'd be fine. And I'm like, okay, so this is what I did. This is me being a mirror. I said, I'm hearing a lot of judgment and insinuation that I am not properly caring for my dog. And I really resent that. So, first of all, what did she do? She didn't apologize, but she turned, oh man, she moves over to the dog. She starts looking at my dog. She goes, "Well, I do see a lot of yeast infections on her underbelly, and I see all the muscle atrophy. And she seems like she's in a lot of pain. So I think it's time to put her down." So I'm like, "Yeah, you gave me what I was looking for." So
Mm.
she repented. She didn't apologize explicitly, but she did exactly what she needed to do.
Right.
And what did I do? I didn't, when we are a mirror for someone, it's like we're not reacting to them at their level. It's like we go above, we're like up on the ceiling with this objectivity looking down like a third party observer, and we're naming what's happening in a very detached way. So I'm hearing a lot of judgment and insinuation that I'm not properly caring for my dog.
Mm.
And I'm feeling. So we use words like that. I'm feeling, I'm hearing, I'm noticing, and that makes us a mirror. And with people who are like out of control like that, who are toxic, what they cannot abide is a true reflection of themselves. They
Right.
can't handle it.
Well,
And so now we have the power. We're not disparaging them.
mm.
We're not hurting them. We're not saying things we regret. We're not responding in kind. But we have the power because we are reflecting back to them, and they are going to stop. That will stop them.
Well, I'm so glad you clarified that, because when I first heard you say mirror, I was anticipating you'd be saying we need to respond the way you show them, give them back what they're getting from. That's what I was hearing. I'm like, whoa, what is that? That just takes you into a spiral. But actually, what you're saying is put up a mirror for them to see exactly how they're coming across.
Yes.
So that not, without being rude or what have you, but just being straight with them and just saying, actually, this is how you're coming across.
Yes.
And letting them see that and feel that. And if you then say they then respond appropriately. Go on.
Well, have you ever had an occasion where they get even more angry at the
At the mirror.
mirror, at the reflection, saying, yeah.
Oh yeah, and we call that denial, but I mean it still paralyzes them. They can't, there's no way they can like get out of it. It's like a fly being trapped in a really good spider web. Like they're just fighting the spider web, but they can't get out of it. So it works.
Yeah. What I love about it is it gives you a way of dealing with it without reacting and getting your own emotions really embroiled.
Responding in a measured way, calling it out. I suppose if you start to get angry yourself, then it's more difficult to convey that message back to them. But if you can maintain some level of calm in it and just say, actually, this is what I'm seeing. I'm not liking it, but this is what I'm seeing. I'm telling you what I'm seeing. You might be seeing that as well as I relate back to you. Maybe I guess they get the message that way.
Yeah, I guess it's also giving you the chance to say this is on them and their behavior. But I'm going to choose my own and separate how.
That's right.
Yeah. Really like that.
Yeah, because what toxic people want is they want to have that effect on you. They want to hurt you. And so it's like this, it's like a invisible like cloak, or what's the word? Force field, where you're like, no, you don't get to shame me. I'm not the shameful person here. Your shame stays with you, and that's what a mirror is. A mirror cannot be penetrated.
Love that. So thinking about your book, the title of your book, When Is It Right to Get Angry?
Oh, I don't have a book. What are you thinking of the title?
Oh, no, sorry, the podcast.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I'm prophesying. Maybe you will have a book.
Angry at the Right Things.
Angry at the Right Things, the podcast. When is it right? When is it right to be angry?
Yeah, it's right to get angry when I think our anger, when we learn to trust that anger, we learn to trust ourselves, and we start to see, I'm going to be honest, we start to see a lot of things that we maybe don't want to see. We start to see that maybe a friend in our life isn't such a great friend after all, that they're always making it about them, and they're very invalidating towards us. We're going to start to see things, and it might lead to the end of that friendship. But I will say, and for me, it has led to a lot of endings. For a lot of my clients, is led to a lot of endings. But the friends that I do have now, the people who are still in my life, man, they are worth 1,000 of the other people they're like as good as gold, because they're people who really do listen and validate. And I don't feel like there's any competition with them. Like, they're happy for me. It's not like a weird, I'm happy for you, but I'm jealous for me kind of dynamic now. It's just people who are just solid and trustworthy. And so I feel more alive as a result of that.
That's a really important and powerful point, because when you start looking at the truth of what behaviors are evoking in you, and whether or not those are serving you or not serving you, you can start to get very decisive about who's in and who's out, or we should start getting decisive about who's in or who's out. But I guess, is there room, once you start discovering things, is there room to discover maybe you've fallen into a pattern of behavior that's not, that can be fixed, once you bring it to light?
Oh, for yourself, that you start seeing that?
Or the relationship that you're in, you can end up in a pattern of behavior. You say this, I say that. But when you start saying, okay, that's no longer okay, maybe you discover a healthier pattern. Is that possible?
Yes. In fact, yeah, I've been happily surprised. I have some clients where I'm like thinking they come to therapy. It's just them seeking therapy for the relationship. And I'm thinking to myself, this relationship is never going to work because this other partner is beyond help. That's my assessment, right? But I have been so surprised over time when my client starts really feeling their anger and connecting with it, pushing back in healthy ways, like just saying, no, Johnny, you don't get to talk to me like that. Where Johnny responds and he's like, okay. Some of them, it's amazing. It is amazing. And I also want to just say, I know, with my husband, I'm the more assertive of the two of us for sure. And I tell him, like, Steve, push back on me. If you feel like I'm bullying you, I don't want to.
Mm,
Push back. Say, Bronwyn, I feel like you're controlling me too much now. Like, push back. And I want to hear that.
mm.
Use your words. Don't let me run over you. And so it really can create such a healthy dynamic for both parties and just a better relationship. Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that that phrase, emotional truth, where we're true with what we're feeling and
Mhm.
experiencing, and also true in how we give voice to that
Mm.
in the relationship.
I just want to pick up and say, I mean, just on the last point you just made there, which is push back sometimes. Is there one big piece of advice that you would give to maybe the next generation who are, having to deal with anger? The world just seems to be so angry out there. I mean, maybe that's the spark of the trigger for some of the wars that we're facing currently. Whatever it is, the world is an angry, certainly a very stressed place. What would you be saying to people out there in general around handling anger that's building, maybe because of stress or what have you? Is there one sort of big piece of advice? I'm just conscious of time and we need to be wrapping soon, but is there one big thought that you want to leave people with here on how to handle uncontrolled
Yeah,
anger?
I think I want to use a metaphor for it. So, I mentioned anger's like the light on the dashboard of
Mm-hmm.
the car. And I also like the metaphor of like a fire. And we're all afraid of fire because it could burn down a house. It's true. But if that fire is contained in a fireplace,
Mm-hmm.
it keeps the whole house warm and lit. And like we don't appreciate that today because we have electricity. But a couple hundred years ago and throughout all human history, you couldn't live without a fire for
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
light and for warmth and heat. And so when it's contained, that's what we need. We need we need our anger to always be there, but contained. And it is indicative of injustice. Like you said, there's all this anger in the world. Well, there's also a lot of injustice in the world. And so good thing we have that anger to alert us to that injustice.
Mm-hmm.
But then other times, it can get out of control. So how do we contain it? We contain it by allowing ourselves to feel it, not shaming ourselves for that, and then putting it into words. What does this anger want to say? What
Mm-hmm.
does it need? How can I work with it?
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And how can people find out more? I know you have the podcast out there. I'm guessing most of the conversations around that. Well, tell us a bit about the podcast and what people can expect from it and how they can find out.
Yeah, so we talk about anger, but we also talk about hatred, shame, a lot about those emotions. And I lead people in the exercises like the integration exercise where we dislodge that shame that we, you know, got in our early childhood that we carry still today in our body. Um, and a lot about codependency because codependents are people who are not in touch with their anger and
Mm-hmm.
how to unlearn the codependency, and a lot about borderline personality disorder as well, which are the other end of the spectrum, the people who are overly connected with their anger, but
Mm-hmm.
um, only anger, it's triggered anger, it's reactive anger. So kind of talking about all that, relational dynamics, parenting, all of the above.
So, if you were to leave maybe one word with parents or to be parents, the next generation coming up, what's the skill that you would say above all else build this capability, build this ability, this intentionality about how you turn up as a parent? What would that be?
Well, I would say the more we heal as individuals, the more we connect with our emotions. And, I like to see the word emotion is mostly composed of the word motion. So, motion, our emotions are there to move us, they're there to give us wisdom. And the more that we can heal our relationship with ourselves, our emotions, and see them as giving us wisdom, then we're able to do that for our children, and they need that from us. That
Hmm.
is very powerful for a child, and that's going to help us be a parent. That's going to help them learn to be a great little human.
Amazing.
Powerful stuff.
I knew it was gonna, from the title, I knew it was gonna be very powerful. Really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. I hope that as a result of this podcast, we'll have people acknowledging their anger more, honoring their anger more, giving space for it to say what it needs to say, highlight what it's pointing out, so that we can be more honest in our relationships, more truthful, but also more safe, because we're able to process it in a healthier manner. So, wow, thank you so much, Bronwyn, and all the very best with your podcast. I'm sure it will be the podcast to rescue many people in this day and age. So amazing. We'll share the link in the show notes.
Thank you both so very much.
Our pleasure.
Well, to our audience around the world, we say thank you yet again for being with us. What an episode this has been. Certainly some great insights there to help us deal with anger in ourselves and the people around us, how we interact with them. Lots of great stuff there. We'll see who's in the seat next week. But if you have any ideas of topics that you would like to hear, then please do write in. hello@the4habits.com. Let us know the topics that you're interested in, and we'll see who we can get to help shed some light on them.
Yeah,
but for now, it's a wrap.
Build the skills to do relationships well.
To do relationships well. For now, it's a wrap. So bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the 4 Habits podcast. Now, if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget, take our free relationship skills quiz at the4habits.com/skills quiz to start improving your relationships today. Hit subscribe, and we'll see you next time.